Welcome to the first ever Saturday Sports Shift for the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League. So, of course, this is a bit of a new thing that we're doing. So, this is actually a podcast that will be hosted every Saturday. It'll be posted during the daytime, posted on Saturdays every single week after the weekly NASCAR iRacing FedEx League action. Of course, preparing for season number 5. I'm, of course, the host of the podcast, Ethan Trendler, the host and the owner of the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League as well. And my co host and other host is going to be Brody Webster. Now, Brody Webster, of course, introduce yourself a little bit.
So I am an Xfinity driver, driver of the number two Chevrolet for CWR, the team who won the championship last season, and looking to go full time this season, but really going to be focusing on this podcast, giving you guys the breakdown of everything that's going on in the FedEx series, really just delivering you guys some of the best content you'll see on YouTube.
Of course, you'll have me as the guy that's not in the driver's seat. Just what the overhead view is, you'll get that point of view, and then of course you'll get Brody's point of view, where he is in the driver's seat and he's in the Grand National Series races every single week, and maybe some Cup Series starts from time to time. Of course, Brody, a brand new league season is coming up, season number 5. We got a lot of new stuff, so I mean, with the Gen 4 car coming in, the rebrand of the Xfinity Series to Grand National, I mean, like, what are your thoughts, first of all, on all these new changes to the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League?
Well, obviously, people were outright mad about the Gen 7 racing, and I mean, reasonably so. Very much dirty air based, and not really that, like, the drivers can't really show who they really are on track. Now, with this Gen 4 coming into the league, I think we'll really see some drivers maybe stand out a little bit more for their talent and less of, strategy, just staying ahead and giving drivers dirty air. And people like Aiden Donahue, I think, will shine a little bit more in this Gen 4 car with him making his big return to the FedEx Cup Series. I think he's going to be really, I think he's going to be a real show of talent of how this Gen 4 car really drives. And then you obviously have the main drivers like who are in the Final Four, like Matthew White, Braden Hunsicker, Cameron Chandler, and then even people like Ashton Miller, Payson Lindsay, and Bryce Benton. I think they're going to be, coming back strong as well with a few of those guys being in TCMC, one of the better teams in this league. And let's give a second to talk about the teams in this league. Let's kind of break down, who's the real standout teams and, who we think is going to kind of make an uprising in the Cup Series. So if you want to go ahead and say some of like the teams you think are really like the big three or like the big four or however many teams it is, if you want to go ahead and say which teams you think those are.
Yeah, of course. Ethan Trendler Racing, of course, my own team, Trenton Wilkins, Sean Hillquist, they're both coming back. They both made the playoffs last season, made it to the round of 8. Of course, no more playoffs this year. It's now the brand new chase format where it's just a 7 race, not like a full season points format, no rounds, no nothing like that. Then we have 2 rookies. Sean Rowe, of course, he was part time at the end of the season. He'll be coming full time to ETR this year. And Davian Toban, of course, making his first ever NASCAR iRacing FedEx Cup Series start, which will be in the Daytona 500. Of course, you got TCMC, Bryce Benton, Cameron Chandler, Payson Lindsay, all returning to the team. And then they got a rookie, Maddox Beard, as well. Of course, he was full time with them in the Grand National Series or the Xfinity Series. Highline, of course, Matthew White, Braden Hunsicker, as always. And Braden Hunsicker, you're defending now NASCAR iRacing FedEx Cup Series champion. Finally got it done in Miami a few weeks ago. And then we move on to Johnson Motorsports. Landon Johnson comes back, so does John Butler, William Reagan, another driver still yet to be announced. Showtime Motorsports. This is a very, very underrated team. Of course, you got Aiden Donahue, of course, the team owner and probably one of the championship favorites. But think about Ashton Miller. Brody, you mentioned him before. I mean, he did win a race last season, the race 24 of the year at Texas. With 2 races to go. Connor Asbell as well did win a race last year in Fontana. Aiden did too at Darlington. So all 3 of them won races last season. So that is a very, very stout lineup. Clear High Racing's having Connor Havrilla come back to the team. Giesbert Racing Management, I mean, it's all right. Like they got up and comers. They got Brandon Pfeiffer full time in the Cup Series first time. Diego Rodriguez coming back. Eli Tomlin. And then you move on to a very, very interesting team, in my opinion. Questionable Motorsports, with Brandon Redford and Jacob Quill returning to the NASCAR iRacing FedEx Cup Series. They are both veterans and winners from season number one. So that is, like, of course, Questionable Motorsports, brand new team. That's definitely one way to build up your team. I mean, you're a brand new team in the Cup Series, looking for resources, get two veteran drivers, race winners as well, to bring them back to the Cup Series and have them compete. I think that's definitely a very, very good thing. And then, of course, talk about Hunter Motorsports. That could be an underrated team with Michael Gregory as well. That's some of the top contenders for the season, I would think, in the Cup Series.
Yeah, I think you definitely with the Showtime Motorsports, I can fully agree with that. I think they're going to be a really good up and coming team here this season. And, of course, they have the real head of Aiden Donahue making his big return, like I had said earlier. I think he's really going to be in that front runner position to be winning this championship here in season five because of not only just his talent in general. I know he was a big advocate of the Gen 4 car, and him being like that, I'm going to make a little assumption here that he's probably going to be pretty good in that car, especially if he was already good in the Gen 7. I'm betting you that he's going to be very good in this Gen 4 car. And then, of course, yeah, Ashton Miller and Connor Asbell, kind of a more low key drivers, but I think they might be able to get it done this year and, really have a big show out season for that team.
Of course, we're moving way into the future with this talk, but 10 drivers make the chase. That'll all start actually in the new Daytona Duels, another new thing coming to the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League this season. You also got a mini season coming. Just going to throw out a bunch of random things that are coming for IndyCar. That'll be at Daytona, the road course. Then we go to Indianapolis for the mini Indy 500, and then we finish it off in Kansas. So that's going to be one hell of a mini championship. Trucks is now up to 6 races. Of course, iCar coming back full time. They'll have a combination race for the ARCA iRacing FedEx Series as well in Daytona during Speed Weeks. Of course, USA Speedway going to host the Clash this season. That's exciting with iCar, and then iCar's late model series as well is going to be making its debut. So that's going to be very, very exciting as well. Another thing we got to talk about that's going to be happening on this podcast is every week we're going to have a couple of driver guests, maybe some other team owner guests, whatnot, just guests around the league come in to join. So, of course, it all will be posted on Saturdays after the week's action. Of course, Thursday night for the Cup Series, Wednesday for Grand National, Tuesday for iCar, and then sometimes Friday for lobbies. Everything will be done. We'll give you all our thoughts and have some drivers in the booth as well.
So I'd like to also point out that we're going to be posting some highlights from the races in here as well. Really showing the action that happened. For those who missed the live sessions of those races, we can really show like the more, you know, I guess you want to say interesting parts that people, normally like to watch more, but we'll show some, maybe some crashes, some action here and there, some big passes, and really just show like how the race boiled down to like who won.
So now moving on to maybe a bit of a different topic, but still with the upcoming, of course, season number 5 news for the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League. How about some of the new schedule additions? I already mentioned that the USA Speedway Clash is going to be coming. Got the 2 Daytona Duels. Of course, Daytona 500 going to be, as always, the first race. But how about this for the Cup Series and the Grand National Series? Legacy Atlanta. I mean, that's, of course, we always ran at Super Speedway Atlanta. Like, Brody, what are your thoughts on Legacy Atlanta coming?
So, me as we'll put it out there. I'm not the most experienced driver, obviously, still trying to put my name out there in the Grand National Series. But, as a more of a mid-pack driver, Atlanta was a place where, you could go and be in the front. And now that Legacy Atlanta has come, at the same time, I kind of do like that because it's creating more of a skill gap with less super speedways. There's more real winners. And I think that's how this league should be. So I fully agree with that choice to switch to Legacy Atlanta, even though, if it wasn't my favorite, that's just might be how it is. I'm better at speedways anyway, so I kind of do like Legacy Atlanta either way. I think it's a pretty good track, so either way, I would have been fine with either options.
Of course, he also moved down, or coming back to Phoenix Raceway again. A weird thing is, we raced in the Cup Series at Phoenix Raceway in Season 1, Season 3, and now Season 5. So we've never had back-to-back season races at Phoenix. Of course, the Grand National Series is going to be making its debut there as well. And, of course, making their debut at Rockingham is going to be the Cup Series, where Grand National was the last season. And then we got Pocono coming back to the Cup Series schedule as well. So that is 3 new tracks actually in a row. Race 7, Race 8, and Race 9 for the Cup Series. Moving on to a couple more new Cup tracks, you also got the old Legacy Iowa Speedway coming back. Of course, that's going to be what we ran back in season number 2. It's going to be not under the lights as well. You also got North Wilkesboro Speedway. How about that? Brand new, going to be repaved. Might be under the lights even at North Wilkesboro for both Cup and Grand National. New Hampshire Motor Speedway is going to be coming to the Cup Series schedule. Will not be on the Grand National schedule, though. When Cup goes to New Hampshire, Grand National is actually going to be going to Kevin Harvick's Kern Speedway. So that's a very, very exciting new track addition. And how about this? The Las Vegas season finale. That is going to be a very, very exciting one.
Yep. And especially with, the chase to the FedEx Cup, I feel like it's going to be very close going into that last race. So we could see some really good action in that last race. And it adds the fact where it's not all down to one race, but instead strung out over multiple races. And that's what I like about the chase of the FedEx Cup is it doesn't always come down to one race, but therefore come down to multiple, showing that people can show their talent across multiple races. And, even if they have one bad race, it doesn't completely knock them out, but they always pretty much have a chance to go get that back and cut the gap.
Of course, talking about Grand National, or the former Xfinity series from last season, the Grand National actually going to be having even more of an extreme to that. It's going to be a full season point standing, so no playoffs whatsoever, no gimmicks, no resets, no nothing, just full season, Winston style, but with different points totals and whatnot. Points for Grand National, which is going to be very, very exciting. Also got another exciting racetrack coming to Grand National, going to be Mexico City. That's going to be a very good track. Another new international track for the Grand National Series. Always good to see that. Richmond Raceway, also first time going to be on the Grand National schedule. Sonoma's returning even as well. Forgot to mention that. Just so many good new tracks. You also talk about. We also talked about Kern County Speedway. That's going to be very, very exciting as well. And then, of course, we all finished it out at Las Vegas, where the championships will be decided.
Yup. And, I think the Grand National race probably will. You can't say anything too soon, but, I think someone's going to pull away by then. I think the last race is going to be kind of just more for like the second and third place. Who gets those places? And, you know, I say what you want to say about the chase and the playoffs. This format is really where NASCAR started, so I can fully agree with the FedEx Grand National Series going to this and really showing who has been the most consistent and who's really been the best over the whole season instead of just who's been best at the end.
Yeah, but you even think about it. I mean, we talked about, we didn't really even talk about it, but behind the scenes, on the full season points battle for the Xfinity Series last season, it was really, really close. I mean, it was coming down to the last race for if it was going to be full season, so you never know. You could have a good battle to the end in full season, or it could even be vice versa. You have a good battle in Xfinity or Grand National, and then you go over to the Cup side, and maybe it's even locked up early then, which would be, of course, a complete surprise. So anything could happen.
Yep, and that's why you say it's pretty far in the future to say anything too soon. But, both of these series, I think it will very much come down to the wire. And even though I kind of said someone might walk away with it kind of early there, at the same time, part of me does think about how close that championship four was last season. And they were all really good over the whole season. So actually, I do fully agree with you with, it actually being down to the wire, maybe down to that last race to see who the real champion is.
Another series that is going to have the full season point standings is going to be the NASCAR iRacing FedEx Truck Series. Of course, that'll be now a 6-race challenge. It's up from one race last season. Of course, it'll all start off in Daytona during Probably my favorite day of Speed Weeks, going to be the busiest day of Speed Weeks, where we have Cup Series practice going on, final practice for the Daytona 500. Then we, of course, have the Truck Series race, and then the Grand National season opener. 3 events, 2 races. Of course, Truck's going to be starting off in Daytona that Friday night before the Daytona 500. And then after that, they go to Eldora about a month later. That is going to be one heck of a race. First ever dirt race for the Truck Series. The only ever second race for the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League on dirt. The Season 2 Clash of Bristol Dirt happened, so I get that technically takes the first place. But Eldora, how about that coming onto the Truck Series schedule? Then we go to Rockingham as well. That should be very, very fun. Second half of the year, a road course going to be on the schedule for the second straight year. This is Watkins Glen this time. Then we go to Talladega, and for the first time ever, Talladega is not going to be the championship race for the Truck Series. It'll actually be Las Vegas, so we will decide 3 championships in Las Vegas and in 3 seasons, so that's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, I can fully agree with that. Las Vegas, one of my favorite tracks, honestly. Always been a big, big track for me. Like, I've always really liked racing there. So, really, that's what's going to decide the championship. And, or maybe it doesn't, again, too far in the future, but hopefully it comes down to that wire, and that is the place where it decides the championship because that is such a good track that creates such good racing. And, you know, I'm just all here for it.
Real quick, when you're watching this on Saturday, it'll actually be only 1 week away from Cup Series preseason Thunder and only 6 days away from Grand National preseason Thunder. We're literally just right around the corner. Action is heating up quickly. Of course, preseason Thunder is 3 sessions before the season. You're going to see all the brand new drivers with their new rides and whatnot. Maybe some drivers that still are yet to be signed won't be there. Then, of course, you're also going to see brand new test paint schemes, brand new numbers, and all that. We'll actually go through the schedules, of course, for the Cup Series, as usual, going to be heading to Daytona for the first session. Then they go to Rockingham Speedway, which, of course, Cup will be on track at Rockingham for the first time this season. And then, of course, Atlanta Motor Speedway, the Legacy Atlanta, going to be for the Cup Series for the first time ever. We actually did Legacy Atlanta in the Truck Series a couple of seasons ago, but it's the first time ever that a Cup Series race will happen there. Grand National will actually, of course, be Daytona as usual for race number 1. Then we go to Kern County Raceway, Kevin Harvick's Kern County Raceway, I should say, as our second session of the night, and another short track going to be at North Wilkesboro to finish out the Grand National day.
Also, speaking of those speed weeks, that is going to be real big talking point of this podcast. And don't worry, we're here for it every Saturday. We'll be speaking about what's happening that week before. But at Daytona, obviously, things get heated. You know, big wrecks cause, big controversies. And, we're all here for it. We're going to give you the biggest scoop you can get in the FedEx Cup and Grand National Series, and even the trucks and, all the other side series. But, definitely that first week at Daytona, we will see, what's been going down and like see what beef has been brewing over the off season. From a driver's standpoint, I've seen kind of the ins and outs of who's really like upset at this person and who's really like going out there to just like put it all out there and not really care about what happens to them. And like, I think it's just going to be very controversial. We'll see some crazy interviews. So, we'll obviously get the best and put it in the highlights on Saturdays.
Of course, the season number 5 Daytona 500 is usually going to be run on Saturday night. We also might have a podcast dropping before the Daytona 500 to preview everything, like maybe debrief a lot of the other Speed Weeks action, and then, of course, preview the main event, the Daytona 500. And then we might have one maybe on Sunday, maybe on Monday, like debriefing the entirety of Speed Weeks, and, of course, most importantly, debriefing the Season 5 Daytona 500. Now let's move into ICAR, which of course is our partner league in the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League. Their Pro Series usually always runs on Tuesdays. That'll be the case at USA Speedway before the Clash, and of course, then of course they run on Thursday with the ARCA Series. So during actual speed weeks, but they'll be dropping a brand new late model tour. It'll be, I believe, a full season schedule as well. We'll have some broadcasts for that. It all starts at USA Speedway, of course, during the Clash Week. That Clash Week is actually pretty packed. Get a late model race, an iCar Pro Series race, and of course the Clash. Might even have lobbies then as well, so very, very excited for that after preseason Thunder. Of course, as we begin to maybe wrap this up a little bit, we'll be, of course, going more in depth into the Grand National Series. I know we talked a lot about Cup. That, of course, is the main series. More in depth, all the signings and whatnot, big, silly season roster moves and all that. Previewing more of that season, of course, previewing more of Cup and whatnot there. I'm not exactly sure when are we going to have the next episode of this podcast, because Cup Series preseason Thunder is on Saturday. We might have it on Sunday dropping then. We'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, of course, here from the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League studios, I'm Ethan Trendler. That was Brody Webster. We'll see you next week on the Saturday Sports Shift.